Welcome to Never By the Book podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Scholes. At 24, I was dead broke and a full-blown alcoholic. By age 40, I was debt-free and a millionaire. Now I share my secrets of success and transformation to audiences around the world as an author, speaker, success mentor, and of course, your podcast host. Each Never By the Book episode features a guest who has overcome obstacles to build an incredible life of fulfillment. After I was first introduced to my next guest, Andrew Biernat, he told my producer, "This guy sounds like me in 24 years," which I took as an extreme compliment. Andrew describes himself as an infectious energizer, Christ follower, devoted husband, and father, and the Buffalo Bills' #1 fan. Go Seahawks. Like me, Andrew has a history of alcohol addiction. Unlike me, he is celebrating 7 years sober today. Enjoy this deep dive into the topic of sobriety titled Man in the Mirror. I don't know about yourself, but I knew at a very young age. I knew at probably 16, 17 years old I was an alcoholic.
I didn't really start drinking until, I went to a couple parties and stuff, freshman, sophomore year, but I was kind of a loser and didn't really have any friends. So I didn't really have a whole lot of great social opportunities for drinking. And so that didn't really come around until I actually transferred to a different school. And so then the group of friends I had, and then when I transferred out of that school, my next group of friends, I found that, wow, this is fun. Parties are great. And I found that drinking was something that I was good at. I hadn't found anything else that I was really, really good at. But I was good. Man, I can drink, but not tolerate it well. Right. I could just drink large quantities and become an idiot. I was really good at doing that. And because at the time I was 6'2" and 160 pounds, you know what I mean? So 10 drinks or 8 drinks and I'm a mess. And so for me, that was kind of my college experience. I want to make sure I have a lot of fun in college. And then post college, I was that guy that kept showing up at college parties for a while. And then, finally started really hitting the bar scene. And then eventually I actually lost my job. I was in a career I didn't like. Mm-hmm. I was in a place where my friend group wasn't going where I wanted to go. And I didn't have a whole lot of great prospects, whether it was dating, whether it was in my finances, whether it was in my professional life. Things were just blah. They were just, they were there. They existed. And it's easy to blame circumstance, right? It's easy to blame other people. And in that spot for me, it got darker and darker and darker. And I started applying for jobs and I was just I was on unemployment at the time. And this is funny, right? So I all I had to do was log in and type in that I was still unemployed and I would get an unemployment check. Yeah. But there was weeks sometimes that would go by where I just wouldn't do that. Yeah. And if you miss 2 weeks in a row, then they consider you employed. And so that was just a whole hot mess. I was so out of whack and out of alignment. I had lost track of time, lost track of space, lost track of myself, that I couldn't even sign in to get paid to live. Right. Yeah. So for me in that time of my life, I knew that I didn't like where things were. So I was actually looking for an escape. I was looking for a way out of where I was. I was I need to move somewhere else. I need to start over. I need to nuke this whole life and start fresh. Right. And so I was looking at okay, well, if I wanted to nuke it all and I was going to start again, where would I go? Right. And I'm okay, well, maybe I'll look at North Carolina or California or somewhere that's not here in upstate New York where it's cold and brutal in the wintertime. And as I was doing that searching, my brother reached out and he's hey, I've got this open position for a personal trainer at my business. And I'm sounds interesting. I work out occasionally. I'm not in particularly good shape currently because I drink a lot of beer. And so I'm okay, well, I'll check it out. And I was interviewing for another job at the time. And so, went out there and checked out his fitness studio. Was actually up at 5 a.m, went in and kind of saw the whole operation through the whole morning. And usually I was up till 4 or 5 a.m. from the night before, right? Yeah. So going to bed early and waking up at 5. So it's kind of a different side of the day for me. And I loved it. The experience was fantastic. The people were amazing. The music was pumping. The energy was great. And just the healthy lifestyle and vibe just really, really tickled something that I hadn't been around before. And at the time I was interviewing for this 6-figure sales job. And I knew if I took this personal training job, I'd start off at minimum wage until I got certified, until I got everything else going. And so I'm like, oh, that's a tough pill to swallow, right? So I was in the final round of this 6-figure interview, and it goes sideways. It goes horrendously. Up until that point, I had had 3 interviews in a row with the person who would be my manager, and it was softball stuff, cakewalk. I was crushing it. I felt great. And then I interviewed with her peer, someone who was a manager, but in just a different area. And so she came in and she was downplaying everything about what I was doing. She was knocking me and like, okay, what's your experience? Does that really qualify? You know, and like just really just older than dirt sales tactic type stuff. It was for a sales job. And I wasn't prepared to be in like sales mode, to be in convincing mode. I was ready for another cakewalk, and I got smoked. I got done with the interview, and I'm like, I hate this company. I hate these people. I'm out. Even if they offer me the job, I'm done. I knew they wouldn't. And they called back and they said, you know, they were giving it to somebody else. And so the next day I started working with my brother. So I ended up moving back to my hometown to do that, and that's really where my recovery started, was in just getting out of where I was. And then eventually my brother was like, hey, there's this, leadership development guy you should go and see. He's fantastic, does a great job. And so I get there and he's like, yeah, I do leadership development. I'll do some counseling, kind of depending on what people need. So I was honest in filling out on all the paperwork, right? You know, like, oh, how often do you drink? And I'm like, at the time I had weaned back a bit, right? Because before that, when I was in the real dark spot, it was 4, 5, 6 times a week, often very blackout, often not remembering what happened. And at that point, I was about twice a month, maybe 3 times a month. But again, it's, you know, I was drinking a month and a half's worth of drinks in 2 or 3 different evenings, right? And so
you're binge drinking.
Oh yeah, going hard. And so I put that in there, right? And he's like, hey, you know, we could do some leadership type coaching stuff, but I think you'd be a better fit for the counseling that I do. And it's okay if we transition to that. And I'm like, you know what, man, whatever you think. And so that really was where I started. He took me down a great road, set me up on a fantastic path, and you know, pushed me towards 12-step groups and all kinds of other different things that really kind of filled the holes that I was trying to fill with alcohol, as well as other behaviors. So that's kind of the basis and the basics of my journey. And I want to talk a little bit about, I guess, alcoholism and binge drinking, and I guess maybe some of the differences between the two, right? Because I come from a family of alcoholics. My dad's father was an alcoholic. My mom's father was an alcoholic. And I've had other alcoholic people in my family as well. So, you know, it's definitely something that is, you know, genetically encoded, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's there, right? So for me, I found that I'm very sensitive to when the alcohol starts wearing off, right? It's just to me is the worst feeling, right? Is when I'm starting to come down,
come off it,
right? Yeah. Exactly. So if I have one beverage and I wait 45 minutes, you know what I mean, and then I'm like, ooh, that feeling right there between the next beverage is like the worst. And so like, it always has to be accelerating, right? And that's where things really got out of control for me. So yeah, go ahead.
For me, it was completely different. For me, it was 1's too many or 20's not enough. If I had one drink, I was drinking till it was gone or I passed out.
Yes.
And yeah, I mean, it's crazy how different it is. You know, alcoholism ran in my family too. I mean, both sides of my family. And, you know, we were told about it when we were young. And I'm the youngest of 3 boys. All 3 of us don't drink. My middle brother quit when he was 25 years old. I quit when I was 24 years old. And our oldest brother, he took him a little bit longer. He was like 29, 30 when he quit, but all of us quit. And here's the thing, we were all 3 different drunks. All 3 of us. The other thing is, you know, when you think of an alcoholic, especially in the older days when I quit, it was the street bum, you know, the guy that, well, that's not me. Because I was a functional alcoholic. I went to work every day, never missed work, you know, paid my bills, did all that. But no better than the guy sitting on the street corner. So,
Yeah, I think that's an important distinction, right? Is when people think about alcoholism and they think about people that have a challenge with alcohol,
yeah,
it's easy to think of the person who is like really highly
right.
chemically addicted, right? Where if they stop
Yeah,
drinking, they have the risk of dying. And so that, have that weaning off, right? That's really like the picture that a lot of people get, where like
yeah,
you're just haggard and
yeah,
homeless and just, you're just constantly in a state of dishevelment,
yeah,
right? But I think there's a tremendous amount of people that fall into that weird gray area where
yeah.
it's like some people could just have a beverage and move on, and that's fine. And then there's
Yep.
other people that they have 2 or 3 and they start getting a little silly and it's just fine.
Right.
And then there's those other people that maybe accelerate a little bit past that, but it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Everybody else
Yeah.
does it. Not a big deal. Right.
Yeah.
And it's when you start getting into that gray area that
Yep.
I think it's important to understand that there's kind of different levels. There's a
There is.
spectrum to this type of stuff. And I think everybody falls into their own different spot. Just like you were talking about, everyone falls into their own rock bottom, right?
Yep.
Because I think rock bottom moments happen for pretty much everybody in the recovery community in some way or another. Everyone's got their horror story that turned them around. And, one person's horror story is another person's regular Tuesday.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
well,
I happen all the time.
And here's the thing with addiction, and it doesn't matter whether it's alcohol, drugs, whatever. The thing with addiction is everybody's going to hit rock bottom. Some might be 6 feet under, but they're going to hit it unless they address it.
It really becomes, what are you willing to tolerate, right? What are you going to say is okay? Where do you draw the line?
Yeah.
And I was actually talking with a friend on another episode, and she mentioned that, she knew that her husband had some challenges, that he was drinking quite a bit, and, they had a kid together, and for her, the last straw was when he went to go pick up their child from daycare. He brought alcohol in the car with him for the 5-minute drive to pick up their kid.
Yeah.
And then brought the child home, and then accidentally left the bottle in there and said, "Hey, can you go grab it for me?" And she was like, "What the heck?"
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? There's like this invisible line where at some point you crossed it. Right.
Yeah.
For me, it happened on a weekend where I was hosting a bunch of people at my family property, and it's down the southern tier. It's gorgeous. Got 2 ponds, cabin, great spots to just hang out. Right. And to me, that was the epitome of joy. Was like the nice, warm summer day, breeze going through the air, hopping in the water, coming out to a nice cold beer, hanging out. That to me, it's like a Budweiser commercial. You know what I mean? It was like that was life. That was really living. And I couldn't imagine living without that.
Right.
And my counselor had challenged me, and he said, maybe you don't have to give it up forever, but maybe just try 3 months. Just try 3 months without it and just see how you feel. And I'm like, it's just, it's too much fun. I've got it under control. It's only a couple times, once or twice a month, not a big deal. And so go through this entire weekend, and I made a complete fool of myself. Right. So I'm hosting, and I'm obliterated. Right.
Yeah.
And it's embarrassing. It was very embarrassing. And I get to the end of the weekend, and I'm driving home with my friend, and I can't even drive. I was sober at the point, but I couldn't even
sober or
detoxing. So, I was to the point where my hangover was so brutal that I couldn't physically do anything. Yeah. Right. And so I'm like, dude, take the wheel. I can't do anything. And so like, I've got my head out the window half the ride home, you know what I mean? And like, I go to retch at home, and there's literally nothing in my body, in my stomach. And I can't do anything. Right. And so I curl up on my bed, and actually my counselor's given me the Alcoholics Anonymous book. And so I started just kind of leafing through it, trying to eat a crusty, stale piece of bread, attempting to hold down some water, you know what I mean? And like spent the entire day just there, not doing anything. And I was like, you know what? I'll give that 90 days a try. I'll try 90 days. I'm not going to want to touch this again for at least a month anyway. Right. You know what I mean? Just based on this weekend. And then, that first month shouldn't be too bad. And then we'll see where we go from there. And I think the biggest challenge I ran into wasn't actually with myself. It was actually with my friends. It was with my peer group. Yeah. And I had a lot of people, not a lot, but there were several really uncomfortable interactions where people were either hurt or offended or mad that I was not going to drink with them.
Because they don't understand. Yeah. I had the same issue. Actually with my mother. I mean, when I went and sat down and told Mom, she was like, "No, are you sure? Are you sure?" It's like, "Mom, duh." So I said, tell her stories. Oh my God. Well, here's her second son and her youngest son. And I was the golden child, coming to her and admitting I'm an alcoholic and I got a problem and I got to do something about it. And then when I went to my friends, it was kind of the same thing. And, I got two of my friends who are still my best friends to this day. So, you got to consider, I've been sober for over 30 years now and we're still best friends. But at first they were like, what? And I'd sit and explain to them. And one of my best friends and I lived together. And I'm like, do you remember we'd go out, we'd party, we'd come home, you go to bed, I'd stay up. I go, did you ever look in the fridge the next day and all the alcohol's gone? Oh, yeah. Well, duh.
Went somewhere.
Yeah. So, and here's the thing. He still drinks to this day. He knows how to control it. He can control it. I don't. I still, and it doesn't bother me, anymore. So, yeah, it's completely different. And then, you talked about, you having that hangover and stuff. I had a similar thing. I mean, I got hammered on a Friday night and actually ended up getting a DUI, went home, went to bed, woke up Monday, and that was Friday night after I got booted or taken out of jail. Buddy came, got me out of jail. I went home, went to bed. Monday morning, I got up to go to work and I looked at my wallet and I opened it up and there was a ticket. And I went, oh no, it wasn't a dream. I mean, for 2 days, I thought it was a dream. And at that point, I just said, I can't do this anymore. And it was like, and here's the thing. I don't know for you, Andrew, but for me, it's like this weight was lifted off my shoulder. It was like, oh God. But then it was like, okay, well, how do I do this?
Right. Now what do I do?
Yeah. Now what do I do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. And that weight is really interesting because for me, when I made my commitment, I was like, it was only going to be 90 days, right? It was an experiment, right? I committed to an experiment. I'm like, I can do that. I can do an experiment. And with the counseling I was doing, and at the time, I think I was starting to get back into church, and I was starting to rebuild a friend group that was a better support system for me, starting to reconnect with people in a healthy way, have hard conversations that I'd been avoiding, all that type of stuff, right? Really doing a lot of that work. And when I was doing that work, at the end of that 90 days, that 3-month period, I felt better than I had ever felt in my entire life, energy wise, mental wise, emotional wise, like every single aspect that I could look at within myself, I was better. I was better than I ever was.
Right.
And so I'm like, yeah, alcohol is fun, but how can I bring that back knowing now how good I feel? Right. Why would I willingly give up how good I feel to go back to anything else?
Well, and I think that's part of our society is, watch not every commercial, but all the, most of commercials. It's, drinking and having a good time. Everybody thinks you have to drink or you have to do some sort of drug or whatever to have a good time. I mean, I can see you don't drink and look at your energy you got. You have a good time. You like to have fun.
I do.
Yeah. And I do too. And I mean, there's been multiple times, my daughters are 27 and 25 now. And, we'll go to a party or, we'll have parties. I love to host parties at my house all the time. And people are over and I'm jumping right in playing drinking games with them, but I'll be using water and having a good time and doing things. I mean, I've had my daughter's friends come up to them at different times. Hey, your dad drinking? And they just laugh at him. No. People don't understand. You can still have a good time and interact and do everything, and you don't have to drink.
Yeah.
I don't know about you. It takes time to get used to that. It's not going to happen. You're not going to quit drinking today and start doing that tomorrow. It takes some time, but it can be done. You can still live the life you thought you were living with alcohol without alcohol.
Yeah, well, that's 100% right. Because what I look at when I drank, I was borrowing happiness from the next day. That's really all it was. I was just taking that happiness from, Saturday morning and Saturday afternoon and maybe even some of Saturday night. And I was rolling that all up into Friday night. Right. And really at the end of the day, I can kind of maybe have a more level experience with my happiness over a longer period of time and feel so much better about it.
Right.
And what I found is a lot of people use it as a crutch, right? It's either a social lubricant
Yeah.
or it's a way for them to cope.
To relax, cope.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
and
sure.
for those listening, if you've ever said, man, I need a glass of wine, really take a step back.
Yeah.
Just pause for a second, right? And understand that is a dangerous road to get down. If you can't be okay without X, Y, or Z, be careful, because that X, Y, or Z doesn't have to be alcohol. It could be another substance, but it could be really anything, right? Because I look at coping behaviors and addictive behaviors. I look at it relatively broadly, right? It could be shopping. It could be binging on Netflix. It could be video games. It can be pornography. It could be gambling. Almost everyone's got something.
Yeah.
Almost everybody has some unhealthy coping mechanism that they're leaning on, right? And some clinicians are going to say yes or no, it's addiction or not. But really, I would look at it as, if it is an unhealthy behavior that is doing detriment to you in some way, that's an addiction, right? That is a behavior that does not need to be in your life.
Well, and here's the thing for both our audiences is our addictive personalities haven't gone away.
No.
We've just learned to put it into something healthy. For me, when I get to that moment of, and I haven't been to that moment in God 29 years of, oh, I need a drink. But when I get to that moment that most people say, oh, I need a glass of wine, I throw my running shoes on. And whether I go for a run or walk or whatever, that's what I do. And my kids even know it. I mean, they live on their own and everything now, but before they left, if they saw that I was getting irritable or something, they'd say, Dad, why don't you go for a run? And I would. And 2-3 mile run, I come back, it's like I had a 6-pack of beer. It's just like, I just
all is right.
Yeah. But I'm going to wake up in the morning without a hangover.
Exactly. Right. Maybe a little sore, right? Depending on how hard you ran. But at the end of the day, that's a good feeling, because it feels like progress.
Yep.
And I think that's maybe a piece too, is when we feel like we're not in control, when we feel like we can't make progress, when we feel like we don't get to be our best selves, I think that's when coping really starts kicking into high gear. So I know for me, when I found that creative expression in whatever way that I'm doing that's been a big outlet for me, whether I'm making posts on social media, whether we're right here recording a podcast together. Like, to me, this is thrilling. This is filling a deep need that I have.
I could feel your energy when we started this.
Right.
And it's true energy, because it's not hidden by something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gets to be fully expressed. There's nothing muting it or numbing it. Right? 'Cause that's what alcohol was. It was muting and numbing the feelings that I had. And my feelings were, my life freaking sucks. And I need to do something about it, but I'm choosing not to do something about it. And I'm going to go to the bar instead. That's what was going on. And so since then, the more I've leaned into creating and helping and just doing things that are fascinating and interesting and challenging, that is when I'm at my best. And I find that when I'm attempted to go back into old coping mechanisms, it's usually in a time of high stress, where I feel like I'm not making progress, where I've lost control, where all these feelings from way back when start creeping back up again, right? And so it's finding ways to get ahead of that, finding ways to make progress.
Right. Well, and I think, that friend that introduced us, I think when she talked to you, she saw so much of you, so much of me and you, and how we do deal with things, and how we, are, you're creative in that space. I'm creative in the business space. And just, she's like, you have to meet this guy. And I was like, I'm so glad she introduced us, because like I said, I see a younger version of myself, and I see great things of what's going to happen with you. And, we got a big day coming tomorrow. So let's talk about what's going.
That.
Yeah.
So for me, we're recording this the day before my sobriety anniversary. So today I'm 6 years and 360 whatever days, of sobriety. And it was September 1st of 2016. 2016, yeah. And that was the first day where I was like, that's it. Okay, take a pause. Or was it 2015?
Yeah.
And so that was the start. And it started with committing to 90 days.
Yep.
You know, it was like, I'm just going to take a break. That was all it was. Because committing to something huge, right? Like, you know, committing to being married, you know, committing to something where it's going to be like, it's intended to be a forever thing.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of thought, and it's very scary.
Yeah.
And committing to something small, to me at the time, was a lot easier. And for me, I've built up a tolerance for big commitments over time.
Yeah.
Because that changed me. It changed the way I saw committing to a process. And through processes, through getting rid of what is dragging me down, I create space for opportunity. I create space for the things that I want to do. Because up until then, I'd always tried to add in. I tried to do more. And I kept getting more and more depleted. There was less and less of me to give. And I spent a year in college, probably one of the worst years, where I was a yes man, right? I committed. I'm verbally committed. I was like, I'm going to be a yes man. People are like, hey, you want to go do this? I'm like, yeah, let's go do it. Within some reason, right? Actually, I passed up
on
a lot of other drug opopportunities, but
so was that movie? Was it? I think Jim Carrey was in that movie.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, very similar. Yeah.
So was that written for you?
Almost, just about. Yeah, because I'm like, yes, let's do it. Yeah, let's go. Yeah, let's go. So, yeah, should we stay out later? Yeah, of course. Should we do this? Yeah. And like, it was cool because I met a lot of fun people. I learned a lot of interesting things. I learned a lot about myself. But because I was in many ways boundaryless, I hadn't set limits in certain areas. I ran into a lot of problems, a lot of trouble. Like usually my sleep was the first thing that suffered. And so I found, actually, for me, sleep is an enormous part of my mental well-being.
Oh yeah.
When I'm not sleeping well, my head gets in a bad place. So like I have 2 kids at home, 4 and 1, and thankfully they're most of their way through, any type of sleep regression type stuff. But when they were younger, like it started putting me back into some pretty dark, challenging places, because sleep matters to me a lot. Now, everyone's got different kind of health things that matter a lot. For some people, they need to get a certain amount of exercise, otherwise they get that feeling. For certain people, they need to.
That'd be me.
Everyone's got their healthy thing that is like probably the cornerstone. And I found that, I would just spend, my time in between classes just napping on the couch in the library and just trying to squeeze stuff in, because I was doing too much.
Yeah,
I was trying to do it all.
Well, and when I'm coaching people in business, I say the best things I ever did in business were the things I said no to. And it's the same thing when it comes to your health or addiction or anything. The best thing you can do is say no to things. Sometimes you got to be selfish to be selfless. And people are afraid to do that.
Yeah. Because we're shown so often that you can have it all, you can be it all, you can do it all, if you'll just add this new habit, if you'll just say yes to that opportunity, if you'll just whatever. There's always a new thing, always a new marketing campaign, always a new movie that's going to convince you that something's going to be the best way.
More.
Yeah.
Well, I want less, and more of the good stuff.
Right. And I think that's key. Is I think each person's got an individual set of values that guide us and that run us on our path. And with that set of values, I think where I ran into a lot of trouble was I wasn't living according to those values.
Yeah.
I wasn't living in alignment with what I actually thought was important, with the things that I really, truly believed. And it was in a lot of the inner work that I did, was figuring out what does matter to me, what is important to me. And especially on social media, it's so easy to get caught up in the things, or the flashy stuff, or the money, or the fame, or I know so-and-so, and all that stuff. It's so easy to get washed up in what to me were things that didn't fit my value set. Right. And even still today, I have to be very conscious and careful that the things that I'm pursuing and the opportunities that I'm taking, that they match and that they align.
Yeah.
Right. Because do I want to drive a Lamborghini? You bet. I want to drive a Lamborghini. But am I going to bust my butt? And am I going to stay away from my family? Am I going to go down a road that's going to pull me away from the things that are really important to me in order to get a Lamborghini?
Right.
I can't do that. Right now, is it possible that I can live in alignment and still get that Lamborghini? I think so. Yeah. Right. But for me, that's not the cards today. That's not in the cards next week. right?
Well, I teach people that in my financial literacy classes I do is pay attention to your needs now. You can have what you want later. So yeah, can I have a Lamborghini? Yeah, I can go have one right now, but I don't need one. And you know what? Quite frankly, it doesn't align with who I am as a person.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I can go do this flashy stuff, but it just doesn't align.
Right. At the end of the day, what actually matters? Like for me, one thing that has been kind of eating at me a little bit is I'm 34 years old now, and I do not own a home. And some of that's been financial challenges, but another piece of it has been, what does owning a home do? It does a couple things that are positive, but it's also got some drawbacks. It's got a list of drawbacks that nobody really talks about.
Yeah.
It's got a lawn that needs to be mowed.
Yeah.
It's got a roof that may leak. It's got stuff in the basement that may run into problems. It's got this, that, and the other thing that are going to take some of your time, right? There's a cost outside of just buying it that comes with it. And so for me, I've been very careful about, when do I want to own a home?
Right.
Because right now, for me, where I'm focusing, if I'm spending 3, 4, 5, 10 plus hours a week tending to an asset, tending to something that I own, it's taking me away from the things that I actually care about, from the values that actually matter to me.
Yeah. The thing is, in a case like that, I have a good friend who does a lot of coaching and training and stuff. And he talks about, do you want to be a homeowner or do you want to own a house? There's a big difference. A lot of people, I got to have a house. I got to have a house. I got to have a house. But in order to do that, you have to do the things that a true homeowner, which you said, tend to the yard, maintenance, all that. Are you willing to do that and change your life to do that stuff in order to have that home? If you're not willing to do that, don't buy it. And that's the cool thing about you is you understand that, so you haven't bought one yet. Yeah. The time will come when things will change. I went through the opposite thing. I had a family house that my late wife and I designed and built, raised our family in. I sold it, moved into a townhouse, and would live there for 2 years. And it was like, that's not me. So I bought another house. And now I have the yard, and I don't do all my yard work, but but I have a house and everything that I can entertain at. Yeah. And have that yard and all that. So different points in our lives, been through both of it, have done that, and you got to know who you are as a person. And if you're covering it up with alcohol or drugs or whatever, you don't know. I mean, that's guiding you, right? So, we got the 7 years that, congratulations, by the way. I mean, that's a big thing, big thing. And, for the audience, for both our audiences, something I want everybody to look at is Andrew didn't say he was going to be sober for 7 years. Andrew said he was going to be sober for 90 days. And it turned into 7 years. I didn't ever know that I would be sober for 30 years. Hell, I didn't think I'd live past 40. I hit 57 this year. So, just one day at a time. And that's what they teach us is, one day at a time. And you get through one day, go to the next. Right. So now that you have been sober, I know your life's changed dramatically. You said you got your 2 kids, 4 and 1. That never would have happened if you were still drinking, right?
No. So I met my wife actually towards the end of that 90-day period. I was at about like 110 days, somewhere around there, when I met my wife. And then, she would not have been interested in me if I was going out on a Friday night bender. As it wasn't her style. That type of guy wasn't the guy she wanted. And that was actually one thing that was really helpful for me in some of the counseling that I did was figuring out what I actually wanted. And then actually writing it out, actually putting it to paper, making a picture or making a word diagram or whatever, just putting on paper, what is it that I want? what is it that matters, right? You're digging into values, digging into what is it that I'm seeking. And one of the things that I went through was I wanted to find at the time I was single, and I was like, it'd be nice if I had somebody, had a partner. And I put it all out there. I wrote down the stuff that I was interested in, the traits and the characteristics that I wanted her to have, right? Very, there's a couple that were, looks based, but the majority of it was like, who is she? What matters to her? What does she like to do? What's interesting to her? And just kind of pulling apart a lot of these character traits. And once I decided that sounds like her, that sounds like the lady, I had to do a really hard look in the mirror and say, does this lady even like me right now?
Right.
Is she even going to be interested? You know what I mean? Does she even care what I have to think or say? And at the time that I did that, I'm like, shoot, I got some work to do. You know what I mean? Like she's going to want nothing to do with me. I'm a bum, And so looking at it that way was, I'm not going to change who I am deep down inside. Right. But I can unlock the potential that I have and rise to what is going to be appealing and attractive, right? Yeah. What is going to be interesting to her? What is going to be fascinating to her? Because at the same time, it's going to be interesting and fascinating to me first. It's going to matter to me first. I'm going to do it. I'm going to create it. I'm going to build it. And then she's going to be able to take a look and say, oh, wow, that's pretty neat.
Yeah, it's the same thing when it comes to business. What do you want? I have people do that. And I went through it multiple times in my business is, an exercise of what do you want your business to look like? Sit down, write it down. What do you want it to look like in a year? What do you want it to look like in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? I ended up, not only writing it down and doing it, but when I sold my business, it was what I had wrote down 10 years earlier. And I have people do that with their business now is sit down. What do you want? What do you want it to look like? And it's the same thing, personal life. What do you want your personal life? Who do you want to be with? What are your friends? All that. I talked earlier about, I had a big thing of wanting to be a millionaire when I grew up. I didn't know what it looked like. I had no idea. But after I sobered up and I met my wife within a month or two of getting sober as well. So, and once we got married and we started raising a family and everything, she had no desire to be a millionaire. But she wanted a great family. She wanted good kids. She wanted certain things for our family, for the kids, for our friends, for our relationships, everything. And by working and building on that, we were debt-free and millionaires by the time we were 40. And we didn't focus on that. We focused on being good people, doing the right things, raising good kids, doing, what you're doing now. And we got to where my childhood dream was to be a millionaire. And looking back, I realized it wasn't about the money. It was about the journey of getting there and enjoying that journey. And it took me some time and hardships and things for me to realize that. My wife passed away. It'll be 10 years, September 9th, that she passed away. And it was after that is when I sat down and looked back and went, wow, we accomplished a lot of things. And my childhood dream became true because of what we had done. And that's just, like you say, being a good person, looking at what you want, writing down. And so many people are afraid to write down what they want because they're afraid of what could come from it. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean,
your story really resonates because my wife's very similar in that there was a time where I got all hypey about businessy stuff. I'm like, oh, we're gonna make so much. We're gonna do this and we're gonna have this. And it was very outcome focused rather than journey focused, right? Yeah. And she recognized that, and for her it was a huge turnoff, right? So she had a real nasty taste about entrepreneurship and all that for a while, and so we both had to work through that. And for me, a lot of that was why do I want to earn that amount? Why do I want to have that thing? What's the root of that? Right. Why does that actually matter? Because at the end of the day, a car is just a bunch of metal parts somebody threw together, put a logo on it, and that logo happens to have a lot of value to it, right? Yeah. And so now we say, oh, it's a nice thing, and other people think it's nice, and so now other people are going to translate that nice thing to you, right? So at the end of the day, some of the things that we get obsessed about or people start caring about, right? Money.
Right.
What the heck is money? Right? It's transactions. That's all it is. It's value trading hands. That's all money is. Money doesn't do anything. Doesn't make you anything. It's just there. So having more of it doesn't actually affect anything, right? It can, as far as circumstance.
Right.
And in general, they found that happiness increases with money to a certain extent. Once you get your needs met, right? Once you're once you have a roof, once you can clothe yourself, once you can kind of do some of the basics, right? Then money kind of falls off as far as the correlation between the happiness that it adds to your life.
But the question is, what is your why?
Yeah.
And if you can get people to sit down and say, what is your why? My why was taking care of my family.
Mm-hmm.
And providing and making sure my family wasn't just my direct family. My family was also my employees and business partners. And if I took care of them and took care of my family at home, then I would build wealth and have basically what we wanted. And now, like I say, my daughters are 27, 25. They're living amazing lives. They're doing the same types of things, you know, building good things, and they're good people in society. And I mean, what more of a legacy can I leave than that?
Yeah. And I think I'm in a similar spot to probably that realization that you had, where I got to a point where I said, you know, where are my values? What is important? What do I care about? And, you know, really it's my family, right? That's what's important. And how you define family matters too, right? Because it could be some of those extended connections with people that you love and you care about, whether they're employed by you, whether they're in your network, there's some of the clients you serve, whoever it is, you know, and being able to make a difference there and being able to move the needle, make an impact, do something for them that I wish I had for me, right? Get some of the attention, get some of the advice, get some of the whatever, right? And be able to help people move along just a little bit further than I was brought along. You know, and that's why I look at it for my kids, right? Is part of me wants to give them everything that I never had. You know what I mean? We're gonna go to Disney twice a year. We're gonna live in a lavish mansion and we're gonna have a summer home and all that stuff, right? But really, that's actually not what's gonna matter to them. They're not going to care.
No.
They're going to care about whether dad was there in that house with them. They're going to care about whether we were together and actually low stress when we went on vacation together, right? They're going to care that we actually went somewhere and had fun together, whether it was a lavish, expensive vacation or a fun little road trip. Doesn't actually matter. It matters that we built something together. We had an experience together, and we got to
had an experience, being there for them, loving them, showing them the way. But here's the other thing too: is, you know, we all want more for our kids. We do. I mean, you know, my parents wanted more for me. I wanted more for my kids. I'm sure once my kids have it, they'll want more for theirs. But the other thing is giving your kids everything is not the solution to it.
Yes.
Sometimes the best thing kids can have is tough love and setting boundaries and telling them no. And you know what? It rips your own heart out more than it does them. You know, if they're kicking and screaming, I want that. You know what? I used to, like I said earlier, pay attention to your needs now. You can have what you want later. When I'm doing my financial literacy classes, I also talk a lot about wants and needs. Do you want it or do you need it? And I was doing a class one time, and it was being streamed on Facebook, and one of my daughters was watching it, and this lady asked me what the difference was between wants and needs. And I didn't have my phone on me, but my daughter started blowing out my phone going, no, Dad, no, don't do it. Don't say it. Don't say it. And I used to tell the kids all the time when they were little, I want that. I want that. And I'd say, girls, hold your hand out. Wanting one and crapping the other and see which one fills up first. I don't want to hear I want it. If you need it, let's talk about it. But what that did is set a precedence for my girls that, 27, 25, they both own their own homes. My oldest is married, got a great job. Her husband's amazing, got a great job. My youngest, 25 years old, in real estate, owns a home and an investment piece of property. And they're enjoying life and they're doing good things. But, I set those boundaries and told them that you got to work for things too. So and the thing is both my girls knew everything about, not everything, but almost everything about my alcoholism and what I did through, all the dumb stuff I did as a kid, how I was almost killed multiple times, how I was arrested. I wasn't, they've never seen me drink, but they know the dumb stuff I did. And now it's scary out there now. I mean, what's going on? I don't know if you know, but especially having young girls. Are your kids boys, girls?
Both girls.
Both girls. So you're going to deal with this too. I mean, I'm scared to death for my girls when they go out. I mean, people lacing, people's drinks and everything. And my girls are pretty aware of it. So you got to be careful of that. What's going on out there with child sex trafficking and everything? They'll lace your drinks, and some of the girls have friends who have had their drinks laced, and it's crazy. So, be careful out there.
Mm-hmm. And that's another piece too, is there's certain situations that open you up more to danger, right? And how often do you want to put yourself in that type of situation, right? For me, I don't go into bars all that often, right? Once in a while, I'll go meet a friend or something, or, if a group's going, sure, whatever, but I know for me, being in there just personally is just dangerous for the sobriety side. But at the same time, like, I was fortunate that I didn't get into too many tussles when I was younger and drinking a lot. I think I was just so harmless and drunk that most people were just sad when they looked at me instead of threatened. But at the same time, like, there was plenty of times where I could have gotten a whooping. You know what I mean? And like, just for guys, a lot of times that's more of the risk. But anywhere that you go, whether it's your workplace, whether it's somewhere else, right? There's these opportunities for bad to happen. And I think it's important to be aware and to accept the risk, and then to move on from it. Right? Because you could spend all day worrying about it, right? All day getting all tweaked about it. But it hasn't happened yet. Right. And you can't really do much about it to defend yourself other than a couple smart moves and staying on top of it.
Yeah. You can't live your life scared. Be aware, know what's going on, but don't live your life scared.
And I think you touched on another big piece too, the idea of, you called it tough love, but in reality, I think that's true love, right?
It is.
Being able to be loving does not mean always giving someone what they want. Right. I know for me, I want plenty of stupid things that really I should not have. Right. They have no place in my life. Right. And so I look at kids, and I think a lot of parents do. They take that route where they want to give them everything. Right. I knew a lady that would iron her kids' clothes. She would do everything for him, pack his lunch, everything. And the kid's like 16. And so and she was like, man, he's really struggling with his weight. He's really struggling with other stuff. And I'm like, put him to work. Let him take care of himself. Give him some investment in himself. Because right now, he has no reason to do anything. He plays video games a lot because he's got nothing else to do.
Throw that video game away and put him to work.
Get him working. I mean, stop ironing his clothes. Stop packing his lunch. And just let him go.
Well,
let him ride.
And you'll hear parents, well, I want to do it for my kid. Well, that's fine, but all you're doing is enabling them. It's no different than
someone letting someone drink.
I mean, when I told my mom I was an alcoholic, she didn't want to believe it. Well, guess what? I used to drink with my mom. She enabled me. So don't enable your kids. I mean, tough love it's tough. And like I said, I call it tough love because to me, it's tougher on the parent than it is a kid. I mean, so my youngest daughter, my oldest daughter, when she was in college, she did a volunteer thing, went to Africa and did volunteer work. So a couple of years later, my youngest wanted to do it. So she's at the airport and she's going, Dad, I don't want to go. I can't go. And she didn't know a single person. It was through the GIVE program in Seattle. And we're at the airport, and I happened to be flying out on a business trip that day. So I walked her to the plane, and she's just like, I don't want to go. I can't do this. And I said, I don't care. You said you wanted to do it. You had signed up. We had bought the tickets. You're going. And she's walking down, the runway to get on, or down the jetway to get on the plane. And I lost it. It was harder on me than it was her. And she told me, thank you, later, thank you for making me do that. And now she's traveled all over the world. She's done all sorts of stuff. She lives in Nashville. I live in Washington State. So, it really pushed her to get outside her comfort zone and do something that she wouldn't have done. And like I said, it hurt me more than it did her. And that's something that people really need to really think about is, what do you want for your kids? And it's not giving them everything. It's being good quality adults. And that's giving them a little tough love once in a while. Yeah.
Yep. Tolerating the tantrum or pushing them out of the nest or whatever it is.
Right.
Yep. Yeah. Let them fly. Give them the opportunity to fly. And I think it's important with almost every relationship, right? Anyone that you care about, sometimes it's tough to have those conversations that risk a lot, right? I may hurt them. I may offend them. I may push them in a way that they don't like. They may not like me back. They may get mad at me or whatever. Yeah. And I know back in my days when I was drinking a lot, was all of those opportunities, all of those challenges I avoided. Yeah. They were, nope, I'm just going to push that down and just pretend everything's fine. And fine. It wasn't fine. Nothing was fine, right? I needed to explore those things. I needed to share those things. I needed to be challenged. I needed to challenge other people in particular ways. And once I started doing that, then things started getting better.
So things started getting better when you started doing that. So how about business, your relationship, everything there? I mean, what's Andrew doing now? 7 years tomorrow. What are you going to do to celebrate?
Gonna have a beer. No, I was kidding. So actually, it's going to be relatively mundane. My celebration is going to be putting some content out there that I hope is going to be thought-provoking for people. Because for one of the most powerful things, the most important thing that I learned was getting into 12-step groups and just hearing the level of vulnerability and rawness that people can share with in those groups blew my mind. Yeah. I'm like, you're talking about that in front of a room full of people? Yeah. Sure you want to do that? And then it came my turn. I'm like, hi, I'm Andrew. Yeah. I just pass, I didn't really want to share all that much. Right. Like I got some problems, but it's fine. It took a while for me to really lean into that level of rawness and realness and vulnerability. And my hope is that I can share and be vulnerable in front of other people in such a way that they can be inspired to do that same thing. Because I know for me, we talked about a lot of different aspects, but really fundamentally is opening up about my humanity, opening up about my problems, opening up about my personal challenges. People look at me and they're like, oh, you're so amazing. Oh, I can't believe you're sharing that. I'm not doing it to look good. You know what I mean? I'm not telling you I had a drinking problem because it's going to make me some kind of hero. Right. I'm telling you partly as a cautionary tale, but partly because it's cathartic, right? It's healing. And it opens up the light to come in. Because for me, I've noticed that my worst problems, the worst aspects of me, they thrive in darkness. They thrive when I'm not sharing. They thrive when I'm just keeping them bottled up. And so when I let that darkness out, when I shine the light in, when I just say, boom, this is it. This is me, and it's ugly and it's gross and it's okay if you're shocked and appalled, but in doing that, that darkness, it fades, it dissipates, right? That type of sharing opens that up. And there's a number of ways you can do that. You don't have to shout it from a mountaintop on Facebook or social media, right? But you can do that in groups. You can do that in a book form, right? Yeah. So for those that are listening, Kelly just showed us his book. So you can do it in a lot of different ways. There's a lot of ways to share. And so for me, I found that 12-step groups wasn't the end all be all for my type of sharing. Really, actually, what the biggest thing that irked me about it was the way people introduced themselves.
Oh yeah.
Hi, I'm Ted. I'm an alcoholic. Hi, I'm Ted. And it was just, is there maybe more to you than that?
Right. Are you more? Yeah.
Yeah. And so for me, I was like, yeah, I got problems, but I'm not going to define myself by my problems. And it's hard for me to hang out with a ton of people that define themselves by their problems. And I get it. It's why we're here. It's why we're here to talk about. But really what I want to do is I want to define myself by what I've been given, by the gifts that I have, by the opportunities that have been put in front of me. That's the way I want to look at my life. And so for me, I found a tremendous amount of help through church community and through people of faith, because we got to share on something that was bigger. We got to compare our lives to a better opportunity. And so, for those listening, vulnerability, wherever you get to do that, is going to be crucial in addressing your coping mechanisms, whatever they happen to be.
Helping yourself with your coping. But if you can help one person sharing your story, it's worth it.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. It is, isn't it?
It's one of the most powerful things to say and share something and have someone respond and say, wow, I think that too, or I feel that too, or I've done that too.
Yeah.
Right. My wife and I went through 3 miscarriages a couple years ago. It was
sorry
brutal.
To hear that. Yeah.
It was all in a row. Right. And so we had our first daughter, and no problem. We're like, hey, should we have a kid? Sure. Next month we're pregnant. Great. Having kids thing is easy. Yeah. Right. So then, a bit after that, we're like, okay, let's start trying again. And then, I had a miscarriage, and it was, that's awful. But you know what? Bad things can happen to good people. Let's keep on. Right. And then we had a second one, and that one caught me completely off guard. And then we had our third one, and it started taking me to a really dark place again. And it was only when I started sharing on that journey and actually started putting stuff out there that I started actually working through it, processing it better. Because actually I started having conversations with people. People said, I had a miscarriage 25 years ago. Yeah. And I didn't even tell my husband, or wow. Like heavy stuff that people have been carrying. And to be able to allow my vulnerability to help me heal, but then my healing helping other people on that road as well. That to me, there's almost nothing better in life than being able to feel better and help other people feel better.
It is. Yeah. And, like I said earlier, my wife passed away almost 10 years ago in a few days here. And, I share that from stage when I'm speaking and talk a lot about it. And people are like, how can you do that? How can you talk about it? My youngest daughter and I talked about it for quite a while. She's like, how come you don't talk about mom and this and that? And I go, Amy, I talk about mom all the time. When I'm on stage, I'm always talking about her. I ended up helping my friends heal from it and counseling them through her death. But I was sharing it on stage with people of what I went through when she passed away and how I dealt with it and everything. So it was healing for me. Mm-hmm. And I've had people come up to me and thank me for sharing my story. And then they'll sit and share their story, and they'll start to open up. And once they open up and they start sharing, they've instantly started healing. And I've had people come up to me and talk to me about alcoholism, because I talk about that when I'm on stage. And when they come up and, oh God, my wife's an alcoholic, my husband's an alcoholic, my aunt, my uncle, whoever, my son, thank you for talking about it. Well, it's a healing process that starts for everybody. Like you say, vulnerability, be vulnerable, open it up, share. Doesn't mean you have to tell the whole world, but just be willing to, the right people are going to be in the seats when they need to hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the way you talked about that too is the opportunity to share from the stage. It reminds me of the quote, your mess becomes your message. Yeah. Right? Is the problems and the hardships that we get to go through that have changed us and shaped us. That gets to be the thing that we can talk about, that we can share about, that we can be real about, that we can be vulnerable, that we can show people a path, right? We can show people another option. Yeah. Because sometimes people just don't know that there is another option, that there is another way. They may only know alcohol as coping. That's all that they know. Right. And I know for me, that's kind of all I had learned growing up was, just bottle it up and move on. And so I had to relearn how to actually work through problems and challenges and how to actually take care of the hardships that come in life, because they're going to keep coming. Like, unfortunately, that's the world that we have. Yeah. And to be stuck in a coping cycle is a hard place to be.
Yeah.
Is a hard
Yeah.
place
I mean, challenges are never going to stop. I mean, I quit drinking 30 years ago, and what I've been through since then, most people are like, oh my God. But you just, deal with it, address it, be open about it, share, and move forward.
Mm-hmm.
And back to what we started talking about at the very beginning, look at yourself first. Look in the mirror.
Yeah. In looking at trying to wrap us up, I think you did perfectly. But was there anything else that either of us maybe could share or put a cherry on top?
Well, for you, I mean, congratulations on 7 years.
Thank you.
90 days to 7 years. That, you know what?
Ooh.
That's a good book title, Andrew.
I'm gonna write that one down.
90 days to 7 years.
Book title. And so, yeah, Kelly, I'm always writing my next book, so I love that.
So tell us what Andrew's up to these days.
Yeah. So you asked me that 20 minutes ago.
Yeah.
To kind of catch people up, right? Went through a ton of counseling, met a ton of great people, learned a lot about myself. Was in the fitness industry for a while, did that for 8 years. COVID made it not very fun, made me realize that I wanted to explore a little bit more on my own. Left that not knowing what I was going to do. So I'm like, I'm going to start a business, but I have no idea what I'm doing. So the business didn't do very well. So I looked at, okay, what do I do next, right? And so a couple opportunities opened, right? I created a podcast. I created a forum for me to learn, for me to grow, to connect with fantastic people, to build an audience, to do all of these things, right? And so for me, the podcast has been a great journey just in itself, just in creating consistently, just for my mental health, right? Since I've been doing this podcast, I've found that so many of my other coping mechanisms aren't as big a deal. I'm not as drawn to them as I used to be, which I think is very, very interesting.
Yeah.
When I've found something that I love and enjoy, the other coping things just don't do it. They don't do it for me.
Yeah.
Right. So the podcast has been huge, but at the same time, it's not a revenue generator, right? I'm not getting 20,000 downloads an episode and people are paying me to hawk their products in front of people.
Not yet.
Not yet. Not yet. I'm not going to say it won't happen. So really what I'm focused on right now is two aspects of career. One is the Chamber of Commerce where I work in helping local business people get connected, learn more about how to do things better, but also create that camaraderie, create that experience where people can feel connected to something that's a little bit bigger than themselves. And then on the side, I work in wellness in the sense that I go into businesses and I help teach on certain wellness principles. And a lot of what we talked about today, often people are better by taking things out than by putting things in. In wellness, especially, people want to add. I'm going to add in counseling. I'm going to add in going to the gym. I'm going to add in this new healthy lifestyle. I'm going to add. And so often we maybe need to start with taking away something that's tripping you up. Right? Because if you're going out on a bender every Friday night and you want to work out on Saturday morning, right? It's not that you don't have the motivation to work out Saturday morning, right? It's that you're hungover because you made some poor decisions Friday, right? And that's a microcosm of what we're talking about. But there's so many other things that get in the way for people, right? It's not just addictions, but a lot of times it is leaning on and is nearby coping mechanisms, right? Whether it's food, whether it is work, and you're just throwing yourself into that completely, or whatever, right? People have these things that. Those things, if addressed, make everything else function better.
Learn what to say no to.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So really helping people say no better.
Yeah. Good. We're going to have to do another one of these and talk more about business one of these.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
For
Let's
sure.
book it, man. Let's book it.
Yeah.
So today, friends, this was so much fun. Kelly, can you just maybe talk about your book really quick and ways that people can connect with you?
Yeah, never buy the book. So I wrote the book. It doesn't mean I don't want you to buy it. It means I didn't do things by the book. You want to talk about being vulnerable? My life story. I have 12 or 10 rules in the back, renegade laws of success, things that, I did in my life, people helped me with, that helped me get to where I am. So I use this more as a business card. I do coaching, consulting, speaking, for businesses. And really, I blend personal behaviors with business. I'm a master financial coach, so I do financial coaching, financial literacy. I go into businesses and work with employees and spouses. And when I do coach businesses, I really want to coach them on their personal stuff too, because the way I look at it is the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. And if your business finances are in shambles, your personal finances are probably going to be in shambles as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing. Enjoying life, and just, especially this summer, I've taken a lot of time off. Well, I had a little scare in April. I had have emergency open heart surgery again. So I got through that, and just took some time this summer for me. Now I'm going to dive back in and start doing some more coaching and speaking and things, but just enjoying life. It's really easy to get a hold of me. KellyScholes.com. That's KellySchols.com.
Easy peasy.
Easy. Yeah.
I love it. So
How about
for those tuning in? Oh, go ahead. Oh, yeah, because we're recording for your show too.
Yeah.
So if you want to get a hold of me, LinkedIn's usually my preferred way to meet people. So I'll make sure Kelly has that for his show notes. So find me on LinkedIn, Andrew J. Biernat. So LinkedIn/IN/Andrew J. Biernat. So that's probably the best way to connect with me. I put out all kinds of content there. I love meeting new people. I love connecting. So if there was some stuff here that resonated today, reach out to one of us, right? If one of us shared a story where you're like, oh man, I need to talk about this. Yeah. Reach out, right? Because recovery is huge, and recognizing your challenges is step one, right? Step one is recognizing it, but step two is reaching out a hand, right? And we would love to be a part of that process for you.
Anything we can do to help, for sure, reach out. Awesome. Let's do it again, Andrew. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you too, Kelly.
Talk to you soon. Thank you so much for listening to Never by the Book. Share it with someone you care about, and don't forget to subscribe through your favorite podcast app so you'll never miss an episode. As we close today, remember, if you're not doing it by the book, it just might mean you're on to something great. Until next time, be great.